Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming out this evening. That's me. Snazzy little dresser, don't you think? Well, I grew up believing that the legacy of who we are as a people is the foundation of how we will progress as a society. And where did I get that from? This is my home. It's Thomasville, Georgia. Population 18,460 people. There were more people in my college than there were in my hometown. The population breaks up of 55% African American, 41% Caucasian, and 4% other. So there wasn't a lot of diversity, nor was there a lot of talk about diversity. However, there was a lot of talk about taking care of one another, neighbor helping neighbor. And why is this important? Because if we act with courtesy, humanity, respect, kindness, and love, the community wins. The community cannot win without it. So this was our home. I remember when we moved into this house. My mother was newly divorced with 2 children, my brother and I, 14 and 7 respectively. At the time, which was a while ago, I must confess, being the first African American family to move into this neighborhood was a very big deal. So you can imagine our concern when our next door neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Shepherd, showed up at our door. They were Caucasian, and we were a little nervous. But the wife ended up being really, really nice. She immediately connected with the kids. We loved her instantly. Mr. Shepherd, not so much. He's a little serious man, a very quiet, stern gentleman, and made us a little uncomfortable. It was a little intimidating. Well, they talked for a while, introduced themselves, and when they got ready to leave, Mr. Shepherd turned and looked into my mother's eyes with a serious demeanor and said, "I'll keep an eye out on your property. I'll keep an eye out on you and your family. You won't have any problems here." And he did that. He actually did that until he couldn't do that anymore. "You better not step in our backyard. Mr. Shepherd would let you have it." He would call the cops or speak to you directly, but either way, you were going to leave that backyard. And that became the foundation for a great relationship for many, many decades. There was a little small fence that divided us divided our homes, but that fence actually ended up being a connecting point. Over that fence, we would smile, we would laugh, we exchanged conversations, maybe a dish or two, and we all stayed very good friends over the decades. My brother and his family still live in this house. He actually has raised his children here. And interestingly enough, he still has the same relationship with the new owner of our neighbor. They do the exact same thing, neighbor helping neighbor. That's how the community wins. Doesn't matter what happens in that community, I know about it. And I always know that there's someone there that has got my family and my back. When my mother got sick, her best friends and my best friends actually followed her to the hospital and rallied around her until my brother and I could get there. And when we did, they rallied around us, providing support so we could meet the challenges of caregiving. When my brother had an accident at church, I heard about it before he made it to the hospital, and I was here in Miami. It was those core values that I learned when I lived in that town, and I think those are the core values that drew me to Historic Overtown. I have to say, when I first moved here, this neighborhood did not have the best reputation, and the media had not been kind. But when I got to know the people, learned about the history, it became apparent to me that these 20 blocks nestled in the middle of the city, at the time considered a challenged community, was full of heart and full of people who cared about one another, and that was the history. I saw the beauty of the community through people, the heritage, and the hope. Most importantly, I understood that the history of this place was more than about just people being successful. It was about people taking care of one another. People in this community like one another. They take care of one another. They're kind to one another. Building things, creating things, making money did not supersede the needs of their neighbors. family, and friends, nor did it supersede the humanity. Back then, people created as service to mankind. It's the human spirit that kept this community going. Well, then it happened. We'll call it progress. Dun, dun, dun. Progress for this neighborhood started with the construction of I-95. And if any of you know the history, you know it ripped through this neighborhood and forced many families to relocate, leaving behind a disadvantaged community. Now we call it revitalization, which means we have all these plans for these pretty buildings, probably not for the people that are already here. Now, I'm not here to knock progress or revitalization. I actually am looking forward to it. Everything needs to move forward for the greater good. But my concern is that we're now using progress as a way to remove what's already here, to remove what makes a community home. And that's not just happening in Overtown, actually. That's a microcosm of what's happening in the world. You think of social media and smartphones. They've been a wonderful way to connect with the rest of the world and develop friendships all over the world. But yet, they are also responsible for people feeling lonely, depressed, distressed, and anxious. Because in some cases, they're substituting this for real relationships as well as for their own true identity. The higher the buildings go, the less neighborly we are. Hundreds of people live in buildings and they don't know each other. They don't help each other. Back then, a person's word reigned supreme. A handshake was binding, and one's integrity spoke volumes. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you was a foregone conclusion. And pleasantries like hello, how are you? Please and thank you, listening when people spoke, and eye contact were simple acts that made people feel seen and appreciated. So I think there are a few of you in here that know me a little bit, and you'll all know, if you do, that one of my favorite places on earth is the Historic Black Police Precinct and Courthouse Museum, a couple of blocks from here. It's one of the first buildings I visited when I moved to this area, and I fell in love with it because many of the officers who worked in the building when it was an actual precinct in the 50s were still around and still active in the community. So in the 50s, the Black police patrolmen at the time, they couldn't be called officers. It was segregation, so as you can imagine, white officers and black officers couldn't work together. So they created this precinct, is what you see up here. As you can also imagine, the black officers didn't get the same resources as the white officers did. So a lot of times they had to rely on the community to be successful at their job, and vice versa. So for example, black officers couldn't have a car. So how they police is by walking through the core or by bicycle. So if ever they captured someone that they had to take to jail, they couldn't walk them, they could walk them to jail, or they would flag down someone in the neighborhood and ask them to, if they could get a ride, and that person will take the police officer and the accused to the jail, or they would ask the accused to hop on the handlebars, and they would. So that's neighbor, helping neighbor. That's when a community wins. Another story I love that comes out of that location is Mr. Thomas Blue. Mr. Thomas Blue was blind. He was also a husband and a father and an entrepreneur. He owned a candy shop. So as you can imagine, a blind man owning a candy shop, there is some concerns that he would be robbed or conned. So the city of Miami black police officers, or black patrolmen, actually let him set up shop in a small room in the back of the building that's still open today. This is an example of community policing at its finest. Neighbors helping neighbors. That's when the community wins. And this gentleman, Chief Clarence Dixon, he is the first black police chief in the city of Miami, was also the first black officer to attend the academy. But he almost didn't make it. See, he had to pass at least one of 3 exams, and it actually failed the first 2. So he tells the story of when he failed the first 2 and he was concerned he wasn't going to make it, the community gathered together. People he didn't know, people he did know, friends, family, church members, teachers, everybody got together, rallied around him, and helped him with his exam, helped him study for exam. He passed with flying colors, and that set into motion a stellar career. It wasn't just his success. If it were not for his neighbors, he wouldn't be successful, and they recognized his success would be their success. That's why they rallied around him and supported him. Neighbors helping neighbors. That's a community win. Coretta Scott King once said, "The greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members." So it's the people. It's the people, y'all. It's the humanity. It's the history. It's the culture. These are the things that make up the legacy of a community. These are the things that make up the legacy of this community, all communities. And it's the foundation upon which all progress is made. Instead of eradicating legacy, it is important to embrace it, to build upon it, to make every community great. So here's the call to action portion of the conversation. Yes, I am going to put y'all to work, give you some homework. Legacy is a truly human desire, and so is progress. We, the people, have the power to bring the two together in an impactful way. So I dare you. I dare you to be the bridge between legacy and progress. How, you ask? Well, I want you to think of these things each time you do anything, professionally, personally. These are going to be items that I want you to always check the box off while you're thinking or making decisions. I want you to think daily about how you can make a difference in people's lives, whether it's a small gesture that affects one person or a grand decision that can affect many. Be as passionate about courtesies and kindnesses to others as you are about climbing the proverbial ladder, whether you know them or not. Embrace technology, but not as a substitute for friendship or as a replacement for entertainment, but as a tool to help make those connections better and stronger. Make true and meaningful relationships, and that just cannot be through likes and shares. You have to go out, meet people, show love and affection. Share pleasantries with everyone you come in contact each and every day. Say pleasure to meet you, pleased to make your acquaintance, and mean it. See the beauty in the world around you and build upon its goodness. And to make our legacy the progression of courtesy, humanity, respect, kindness, and love. Neighbors helping neighbors. That's when the community wins. Let it start today. Let it start this moment. And please let it start with us. Thank you so much for your time.